My name is Samantha Hendricks, and I'm the event coordinator here for Schuler Books and for Nicola's Books. We have 3 locations. We're in Grand Rapids, Okemos, and Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor is where you find Nicola's. So I know that's Erin's home store. So maybe some of you are from there. We do have signed copies of Erin's book. So I did drop that in the chat. In the chat, you'll also want to familiarize yourself with, because that is where Laura is going to look later for your questions when they are through with their conversation. So make sure you're dropping all of your questions in there. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our lovely guest this evening. So first we have Laura Taylor Namey, the New York Times bestselling author of Reese's Book Club Pick, A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow, and The Library of Lost Things. A proud Cuban American, she can be found hunting for vintage treasures and wishing she was in London or Paris. She lives in San Diego with her husband and 2 kids. This former teacher writes young adult novels featuring quirky teens learning to navigate life and love. She holds a BA in elementary education from the University of San Diego and is the winner of the Peggy Miller Award for Excellence in Young Adult Fiction. Her 3rd novel is forthcoming from Antonium, Simon & Schuster's fall 2021. And our book launch celebratory guest this evening is Erin Hahn, the author of You'd Be Mine, More Than Maybe, and of course, Never Saw You Coming. She married her very own YA love interest, who she met on her first day of college, and has 2 kids who are much, much cooler than she ever was at their age. She lives in Ann Arbor, also the greenest place on earth, and has a cat named Gus who plays fetch, and a dog named June that does not. That sounds like a very active household.
It is.
So I want to say Never Saw You Coming came to me as an advanced reader copy. And I just want to say I don't have my copy anymore because I've shared it so many times.
Oh, yeah.
It is making its rounds through all of our store friends beyond that. This is the book that I needed growing up. It is the book that my cousins need and my daughter needs and even my son. So I want to thank you so much, Erin, for writing it, because it speaks to everything I was told in childhood and everything I want to change about my kids' childhood. So without further ado, I'm going to let you and Laura have a wonderful conversation, and I will be back.
Okay. Thank you, Samantha. And I just want to welcome everybody. I'm seeing all our buddies pop in. So hi, everyone. We're so glad you're here. And I'm so honored to be here with my buddy, Erin. I met Erin, I think in 2018, when we were both in the same 2019 debut group. And her amazing novel that is one of my favorites of all time, You'd Be Mine, was coming out and with my Library of Lost Things, and we became buds. And her, she's from Michigan, and my husband is from Grand Rapids, Michigan. So I'm kind of like, oh, I'm Michigander. So that's really cool. And I love her very, very much. And she's amazing. And you're going to find out just how amazing she is tonight. And we're going to chat about this gorgeous book. I'm going to read a little bit. I know I'm lucky to get my copy a little early. Thank you. And for those of you that haven't received yours yet, I'm going to read a little bit about Never Saw You Coming. Raised by conservative parents, 18-year-old Meg Hennessy just found out her entire childhood was a lie. Instead of taking a gap year before college to find herself, she ends up traveling north to meet what's left of the family she never knew existed. While there, she meets Micah Allen, a former pastor's kid whose dad ended up in prison, leaving Micah with his own self-complicated relationship with the church. The clock is ticking on Pastor Allen's probation hearing, and Micah, now 19, feels the pressure to forgive, even when he can't possibly forget. As Meg and Micah grow closer, they're confronted with the heavy flutterings of first love and all the complications it brings. Together, they must navigate the sometimes painful process of cutting ties with childhood beliefs as they build something truer and straight from the heart. And here it is. Yay. So welcome, Erin.
Yay. Thank you for
good to see you.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're just gonna what we're gonna do, Erin and I are just gonna chat back and forth a little bit about this book, about some issues, about our writing, about some authory things. And if you're listening along, anytime you have a question, please just jot it in the chat. And after we speak a little bit, I'm going to go through there and feed those to Erin, and hopefully she'll get to as many as we can. So Erin, before we get started into the meat of this book, I want to know about you as a writer. And I love to ask this question when I do events like this, just to learn more about my writer friends. And that's, what do you really want your work to accomplish as a whole? Tell us about your brand goals, or what you long to put into the world whenever you put a new book into the world. Something about your authorial legacy, all of that heavy stuff. Let's start with the big things.
We're going to start with like getting
We
right
are the
into it.
bomb.
I mean, we
Do you
discussed
know
that
me?
ahead of time, but now it's totally happening. Yeah. So, I mean, I think my legacy, I've always wanted to cover heaviness and, you know, big topics like grief and things that teens, I feel like, legitimately do struggle with and go through. But I also wanted to show joy and make it light and make it, I don't want to say, not to belittle those things, but also just to show like you can get through that. You can still face all those really hard things and still find joy in your life. And I think that very much speaks to how I was. You know, I definitely shared on social media and different platforms that like I had a really hard time as a teen and I was super depressed. And you know, I talk about my tattoo that I got, like a little semicolon and everything. And because I was a really sad, lonely kid. And then I also was super joyful. And I think that I think that there's something to that you can still find joy in life and still move on and become an adult. And I think that's what I wanted to reflect in my books, that you can still overcome those things. You know, when you're a teen, you feel like that might be the worst thing ever and you can't really see beyond that. And so I've always wanted to just be able to show like it can get really bad, really, really heavy in the grief, and really terrible things can happen. And you can still overcome that and find joy in your life. And so that's kind of been my mission, even though I didn't realize it until Laura, you had asked me that the other day. And I kind of thought about it and was like, I don't know, what do I want to show? Well, I think it's you know, I joke around like, it's going to hurt, but then you're going to like it. You know, it's like, it kind of feels that way, but also I think that's the point, is that that's life. And I want to just show kids and then adult readers too. Like, I think it's really important for us to be able to read YA and look back and go, oh, I did that. Like, that's true. I survived that, you know? And I think instead of saying to teens, like, it's really not that bad. Well, actually it is, but doesn't mean that you won't survive it. So I think that has kind of been my mission. I don't know that I'm going to do that forever, but that's definitely where I've been for YA. So
yeah, I totally see that in your books though, that resonant hope and along with the fun, but then the gravitas of real life and managing that back and forth is something you do really beautifully. And especially in this book. Yeah. Okay, we're going to bring out the heavy stuff now. This is a book centered on the church and longtime beliefs and longtime beloved held traditions. I think, and we were talking about this the other day, this is what we call a quote unquote, get the quotes out, hard book. This is a tough book. Hard book. It's a tough book to write. It's a tough book to talk about and to think about. Tell us, how did you gear yourself up to tackle this hard book, this hard story?
I mean, it's not a secret that I did not want to write this book, but Meg came to me and I mean, basically she was like, this is my story. And I was like, well, that's great. I'm going to use that in More Than Maybe, which is my second book. And I'm just going to kind of like layer that in a little bit through Veda, her best friend's point of view, but I'm definitely not going to tackle it. And through my awesome editor, she kind of pushed the buttons a little bit and was like, so maybe Meg next, maybe we're going to tackle this next. And every time that she brought it up, Meg's story got worse and worse and worse in my head. And that was before I met Micah. And then when I met Micah, it got even worse in my head. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is literally the heaviest book I've ever written. I think because it's so real to me. It's extremely real to me. Everything, I mean, I don't love the whole own voices, you know, again, with the air quotes, but this is as close to my reality as it will ever be. And so I, you know, you get one shot. And I was like, okay, I'm just gonna put it all on the line, and you get one chance. And then if it sucks, then I'll hopefully write something else later, and and hopefully it doesn't ruin my career, because it's hard to write that, but it's also hard to have other people read it and tell you that that was hard. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
to hear that reflected back. I mean, I don't think I've ever gotten a review from somebody about this book that's been like, well, this was great. And I totally moved past it. And, thanks so much. It was so cute. I have not gotten any of those. It's all like, wow, yeah, I sobbed for days after reading this. And I'm just like, oh no, but I had to tell it. So
Oh goodness. And when writers read other writers' work, we see beyond the reading part and into the craft part. And because I know what it takes to write a book, and I know how hard it is just to write a book that's not one of the quote unquote hard books. To write this, I really just felt for you.
yes.
I was reading it because and the admiration, because I know you too. And when you know someone and you also are their fan, and then you read this, you go, wow, girl. And then you get in the DMs and you're like, hi, you show up,
I was
see what you
laughing
did.
when I sent out this book for blurbs, and one of my blurbs is from Laura. And so she got one of my copies. Ashley's in there. She got one of my early copies and she blurbed. Thank you, Ashley. And so I sent out these early copies, and the first response I got from everybody was like, this is such an important book. I'm so glad you wrote it. And I was like, in my brain, all I could hear was, I'm so glad you wrote it so that I don't have to write this, because it's like, it's totally, and I felt that way with other authors. And so that's how I knew. I was like, yeah, I know. It's so great that I wrote it, so you didn't have to, and you're going to totally support me. And I love it. But also it was like, yeah, good for you. I'm glad you did this. Yeah.
Yeah, I
I have
know.
to
Well,
pass it on to you to do a different one now.
and now that we talk, can you read a little bit from More Than Maybe for us? Sorry, Never Saw You Coming. Not More Than Maybe. Other book that was last year.
Okay, so we had talked about, I'm going to read the beginning of Meg here, because Meg has like my whole heart. So bear with me. I've never actually read one of these before, so we'll see if I can do it. Okay, so this is the very beginning of the book. This is when we very first meet Meg, and this is your first impression of her. So Meg, I was 4 the first time I accepted Jesus into my heart. I say first time because I did it at least 12 times before I turned 16. Better to be absolutely sure, Like, what if I wasn't really feeling it the initial 11 times? Or maybe I was answering the wrong altar call? What if my heart wasn't prepared and I forgot to forgive someone who'd wronged me earlier in the day? Did those ones count? Who can be sure? We live in such conflicting times. Better to answer at every opportunity just in case. Don't want to mess around when your eternal salvation is on the line. All of this is to say, I'm like super saved. Like, if there was a punch card for Gold Star Christians, mine's been well earned and is ready to be cashed in. There's this billboard on the way to my Nana Knutson's in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, and it reads, if you died right now, do you know where you'd wake up? And yeah, I know. I made sure of it. I'm nothing if not a planner. Hope for the best, plan for the rest. Salvation, check. Eternity, double check times 6. My best friend Veda calls it my neurosis, that by confirming my salvation every 10 months, I'm basically negating the whole thing. If I can't trust it worked the first time, who am I even dealing with here? Surely the creator of the universe can keep track of such things. I told her if she's not going to accept Jesus, I'll have to share half of my salvations with her, so she should be grateful. It's what I know, salvation. It's the only certainty in my life. A week ago, that was okay with me. A week ago, I looked at my blank slate of a future and felt the giddy flip in my stomach that spoke of possibility and discovery. I was armed with my relentless faith and the proverbial bucket full of joy, ready to take on the world and answer the call. Unfortunately, just like my mom and dad, last week was a liar.
Okay, now. See, if that doesn't make you want to turn pages, I was like, okay, what's going on? All of this, being said, would you do it again?
I know I told you the other day I wouldn't, and I don't think I would do this specifically again. This kind of faith challenging kind of story. However, I have really enjoyed challenging the purity movement and I've felt very empowered for myself and for my daughter and for my son. I mean, and the stories that I've heard and just how much it's still stuck with so many of us that, you know, even 20 years ago, we're still like really struggling with it. I want to do that again. I'm not sure exactly how or in what way. I mean, in writing adult, which we'll get to later, I'm definitely tackling that, you know, where I'm ready to just like, you know, have on the page sex scenes and stuff like that. Like, you know, there's empowerment in that for women, but I also just definitely want to keep tackling that. And I think I will a little bit in all of my stories.
I think that's okay though. And I kind of, when you said, because you told me the other day, I do it again. And today you're like, nah, I would never. And I think there's such power in a book that you would never write again because you did it once and once is enough. And it's like, those are the books that we need, the books that you only have one go at. And if you think too long, you're never going to do it, but you did it.
Yeah.
And those are the books that change lives and those traditions that maybe are, you know, might not be the best for everyone. And so I just applaud you because, and I think that's the right answer. No, if you wouldn't do it again, you probably, you needed to only do it once. And now it's out in the world and it's going to do great things. So that's good. I love that. Let's go back to Meg. And I love her voice. And thank you for sharing a little bit about her snarky humor and her irreverence and just her self-deprecating ways that she gets. I love that. Why is Meg the perfect protagonist for this very hard book? And what are her origins? All of that. How'd you build her?
So Meg came out of, I was writing More Than Maybe, and I was trying to get to know Veda, who is Meg's best friend, as hopefully you guys know, but Veda was super elusive. I could not get her voice down. I had so much of Luke. He kind of took over the conversation, even though he's like this raging introvert. And so my editor had said to me, and I don't even know if she'll even remember this, but she had said to me, take a weekend and get to know Veda and just spend some time with her. And Veda didn't really talk to me, but Meg did. Hi, you guys now.
Oh,
he wants these flowers that are over here. So I got to know Veda through Meg, and the end of the weekend, I like ended up sending like I had this whole story planned out for Meg of just like what her personality was and who she was, and I loved her. And through her, I got to know Veda because Veda's kind of quiet too, and Meg is definitely the one who's like super, you know, like outgoing and just loves everybody so much and has that joyfulness that I think feeds into Veda's like snarkiness. They kind of, you know, go back and forth. And so that's how I met Meg. And like I said, every time that I got to know her, her story got a little bit darker. I think if you know me in real life, I'm a very bubbly person. You know, I'm very introverted, but I have a very bubbly personality. And so whenever I would talk about serious things, I mean, I felt like it kind of surprised people, you know, like when I talk about how I was as a teen or whatever else, I think that people kind of are surprised that I have this like darkness into me, I guess, if that's like the right word. And I felt like that was definitely Meg. And I felt bad for Meg actually, as I got to know her. I was just like, it's so frustrating because you're so bubbly and cute and joyful, and all this garbage is going to come down on your head, and you've got to figure out a way to face it. And what I love about her, I hate that like term plucky, but she's very plucky. Like, you know, even with this, like she's kind of being snarky about it. Like she tells Veda, like, if you're not going to, you know, trust in Jesus, then I'm going to have to do it twice for both of us. You know, like she's very much like everything that happens. You know, there's another scene in the book where she's upset, she's talking to God, she's angry, and she's just like, you know, I know with all my heart that God is in control of this situation. Whatever. Like she's kind of pissed about it because she's just like, I trust you. Great. You know what's going on. Thanks for cluing me in, you know? And I think that's a really key personality type, is somebody who's bubbly, but also has a lot of heaviness to them. And I love her for that. And I think that it's been healing for me to write that too. Like, yeah, there's like some seriousness inside of you, even if you're always showing this like smiley, you know, super personality, I guess. So she was a delight to write.
Okay, and what about her counterpart, Micah? I call him Eminem. I've been doing this all week. You're welcome, Erin.
Yes. I love
Eminem, Micah. I'm just thinking that we should pass out M&Ms. If we were in a real lunch, I'd be doing this right now. So I don't have any, but I haven't,
Even
because I haven't been
though
out of
I'm
the house.
allergic to M&Ms and I can't have them, Laura would still pass them out for you guys. So you guys should feel grateful.
So would, except I haven't been out of the house to get them because, yeah, writing. So
Right.
this is just virtual M&Ms. You've been all
M&Ms for everybody.
generosity. Isn't it great?
So Micah is
Yeah.
like the other half of me, you know, really. I mean, I don't want to say like he's this out of left field character. Like he's an angry dude. I mean, he's got a lot of really big hurts in his life. You know, he's been totally betrayed by his dad. He's been totally betrayed by the church. He's, you know, but he's also, and I hope this comes across in my mind, Micah would be an amazing pastor. He's really got a heart for God and he's very discerning. And he kind of counsels all, you know, his friend Duke through things, even though he doesn't mean to. They're just like regular conversations. He counsels Meg through things, even though it's just conversations. And to me, that's like the ideal, you know, a leader is that, you know, somebody who is willing to say, this is the reality of the situation and things kind of suck sometimes. You can be angry about them, but also you're important. And I feel like that's kind of Micah's job is for everybody is he's the one going, you're important, you're worth this, you know, you're amazing. And to me, that would be an ideal leader is somebody who notices that in people and makes them feel those things. And so, yeah, so he's got like two sides to him, but he's definitely like this angry drummer dude who's been through a lot. So that's fun to write, you know, kind of get my anger out.
Yeah. Well, give us a little Micah from the
Okay.
text so we can get to know his voice and all of that.
I'm just warning you all, earmuffs for any kids. I could not find like any Micah that wasn't cussing.
Is that my job? I'll do that every time.
Yeah, every time.
What text are we reading?
And when I was like reading it, I was like, there's actually a lot, but this is like the perfect, to me, this is quintessential Micah. So this is from chapter 6. He says, it's a Sunday and I'm nowhere near a church. I'm fairly certain the general consensus surrounding my beliefs is that I'm agnostic, that I'm lost, that whatever happened with my dad crushed my faith and made me into an example of what happens when pastors' kids are led astray. Well, they're wrong. But I won't go near a church, or rather, I refuse to go near the people who make up the church. I don't hate God. He didn't do anything wrong. I don't even hate my dad most days. He's a fuck up, and I don't ever want to see him again, but I can't hate him. I tried. To be honest, I can't muster any strong emotion when it comes to him, which is a lie. But I might hate the church. Again, not the building, the people, specifically the people who comprised our old church, my dad's congregation. For all their talk of forgiveness and loving like Jesus, they sure had a fantastic time throwing my dad in jail and then shitting on his entire family. It's not like we knew what he was doing. My mom married my dad when she was 2 months out of high school. My sisters and I were in junior high, for fuck's sake. We were as blindsided as the rest. My mom spent an entire year barely eating, barely sleeping, barely speaking. My sisters crept into a bubble that was only the two of them and no one else. I lost everything. My dad was my best friend, pathetic as that seems now. After the scandal, it was like he was my only friend. No one wanted anything to do with us. That was when I started climbing rocks and rowing and jumping off of cliffs and whitewater rafting and backpacking off trail. Last year, Duke and I jumped out of an airplane. That was pretty ultimate. Coincidentally, it lined up with the 5-year anniversary of my dad's sentencing. It's hard to dwell when you're free falling thousands of feet hurtling toward the earth. They say your life flashes before your eyes when you're seconds from dying. Mine didn't. I had no interest in seeing that bullshit play out again. That said, it's not that I have a death wish, no matter what my mom thinks. I swear it's nothing like that. It's sort of the opposite. It's like this intense need to have God as close as possible, to wear him like a second skin directly over my pulse, like he could possibly contain all the messed up pieces of me. When there's no one else and I'm at the end of my tether, that's where I feel God. In the waves pummeling me and the sun baking me and the ground surging up around me, that's my fucking church.
Let's unpack this a little more, especially about Micah and his father, because you opened your own can of worms right there with all of this. So maybe we could go back to this a little and spend some time here with Micah and his father, and how that, maybe you can preview a little bit of how that relates to his exodus from the church as a building and
Yeah.
the congregation and all that.
So Micah's dad, and well, if you read my author's note, I'll get into more about where his story kind of came from me personally. But Micah's dad was in prison, or is in prison, because he swindled his congregation and was also using his position of power over women leaders in the church and sleeping with them. And he wasn't arrested for that, but that's just kind of all rolled into one of bad news. And so, I mean, there was a reason why the old congregation left the family. The hard part is for Micah is that he was 13 and his dad was his best friend. And at the end of the trial where his dad was sent to prison, Micah was caught on film. Somebody filmed him as a 13-year-old sticking up for his dad. And he basically, this clip went viral of him basically comparing his dad to Jesus. And in the way that a 13-year-old in your Sunday best kind of just says things, out of what you've been told your whole life, basically. He had this enormous amount of faith in his dad, and his dad blew it. And so in return, the congregation of that church totally disowned them. And Micah has been struggling his whole life. People don't trust him. Parents won't let their daughters date him. He struggled with a lot of, prejudice in his town because of his dad. And it's been 5 years. His dad hasn't reached out to him at all. And he's been a loner, and it's just been really awful for him. So his dad is now on probation and is being released. And so there's this kind of like conflict. Micah's family wants him to reach out to his dad, to forgive him, to be this amazing Christian man. And Micah is still like this hurt 13-year-old inside of him, where he feels, very angry, very betrayed by everybody. But like I said, in the passage, his faith is super real in God. And I think that that's something that happens again and again with Meg and Micah in this book, is that, they don't have faith in church. They don't have faith in humans. Humans are fallible, but their faith in God never goes away. And I think I wanted to show that can happen, because I have that happen with me. I've been through lots of churches and youth groups and Bible camps, and I love them all for different reasons, but something will happen, and it's the human part of them. It's we make shitty mistakes. We're human. Sometimes we hurt people's feelings. Sometimes we step away from other people or ostracize them or whatever in the name of our church. And that can be really hard, but in the end, you still have faith in God, I guess. Mm-hmm. So he's perfect. And that's the way that I believe. So I wanted to give an example of that, of not just kids like turning their back on everything. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to question. So.
Right. And when we meet him like this, we have sympathy and empathy. Some of us have a lot of empathy and sympathy for this. And then here comes Meg, and these two collide.
Yeah.
And they're both going through something entirely similar and entirely different in many ways. But yet that you're talking about the joy and the hope and also the light moments, but they're so fun together, and they kind of just light up the page. And, this couple, I love, like a good OTP couple, like to ship over in a book, like, this is why we do what we do, right? That's why we're here. And they delivered. They were so much fun, and reading them was just joy. Even though all that heaviness is scaffolding them, they just light up, and they did bring that lovely dynamic. And so as a couple, what are some of the things that you can expound upon it? How you crafted them and what you went through, and any inspiration or anything fun about M&M, Megan, Micah? I'm trying to do these like mashups, but
yeah, M&M. So, and we were going to talk about setting two. I can kind of like combine them into one. So Meg and Micah meet in Marquette, Michigan, when she's 18 and he's 19, and they just click. They have this really, I mean, their first meeting is a little bit rocky, but then after that, they just really have always clicked, and they never go through a breakup period. And I don't mean that, like, that's not even a spoiler, because that's just, they have enough going on with like the rest of their lives that they at least can trust each other. And I think that's the point of the book, is that they still have each other for this. They were the most fun to write because Meg is so delightful and so flirty, and she's never really flirted before. So she's like practicing on Micah. And so, I mean, she's never even had like a crush. She's never cared about anybody. So all of a sudden now she's like, I mean, I love her texting to like Veda throughout the story, because she's like constantly like trying to like, so I might have a crush on somebody, and Veda's like, what? You know, because that just never happens. And so I love these little like asides that you get of Meg, because you can tell like she's actually like practicing. She's trying, you know, she initially wants to just be friends with Micah, and she's like, he's going to be my first adult friend. And then like after seeing him with his shirt off, she was like, I might have chosen the wrong person. Yeah, I don't know if I want to be just friends with him, you know. And so it's really wonderful. And he knows what she is inside, and he'll say to Duke, like, you know, she's church girl, you need to understand, like, they're different. And he doesn't mean it in like a, I'm going to, you know, compromise her kind of a way, I'm going to change her. It's in a, I understand where she's coming from. And this is heavy for her. This is going to be different. And it's wonderful because he's so understanding. So and I mean, I met my husband, Mike, who you all know as Mr. Hahn. I guess I just outed him. But I met Mike when my first day of college, you know, in Marquette, Michigan. And, you know, we fell in love through like long walks and just, you know, and I learned about God through him, you know, and just, we were a team, and we've been a team for, you know, over 20 years since then. And I just think that I wanted to show a lot of what they do. And I'm not meaning like what's going on in their life, but like their trips into Marquette and the places they walk around. I lived there for 4 years. It's my favorite place in the whole world. My husband lived there for 5 years. So all those streets, all those places, all the places to eat, those are all places that we went to and we fell in love in and that we walked through. And so, so yeah, it was really special for me to be able to kind of say, like, I speak from you know, and I speak from experience for all of this. Like, all of this was something that I've already been through. And you know, so they are a very fun couple, though. Actually, they're probably a more fun couple than me and Mr. Hahn are.
I don't know about that. Have you been on your Instagram?
Somebody just said they don't have chickens. That's true. They don't have chickens.
They don't have Ashley. Hi, Ashley. That's hilarious. That's true. And like, I will add real quick, having a husband from Michigan, I've done some Michigan summers to go visit the in-laws and all of that. And there's nothing quite like a Michigan lake summer for this California girl who lives in the high desert with the beach and all of that. And you capture that feeling of, it's not 20 degrees, let's go outside, even though it's really buggy. Yeah. And humid. Let's go outside and be on the lake and be on the boats. And all of that is so, it's like they just let out the doors and everybody goes out because it's so fleeting, right? It's going to be fall in 2 minutes.
I actually like read I'm listening to the audiobook right now, and it's wonderful. You should all get it. But there's a line that Micah says. He was like, I know yesterday was Labor Day, but it's fall today. Like, that's
right. Exactly.
Literally the day after, it's now fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you for sharing so much about this book, and we're not going to spoil too much. We're going to talk a little bit about writing right now, because I know everyone's interested in your process, and you know, you have a few books in now. And how has your process changed, or has it, since you've started? And tell us about you as a creator.
My process is a little more precise than when I started, but just because when you have a book on contract, you have to, you know, you have a deadline. You have to write it in a certain amount of time. And I'm not good at writing multiple books at once. So it's like, if I have, you know, right now I have 4 books, you know, in the lineup coming, I have to do one at a time. I have to be kind of on a deadline with each one of them. And my brain can only do one at a time. So it's a little more precise, you know, but I'm not a plotter. I try, I'm no good at it. I will plot a whole friggin' book, and then I'll sit down, and within like a half a page, I'm just like, this is stupid. I'm just going to keep going with whatever the character does. The characters just drive all my stories. And so I think I like that better. I like letting Meg and Micah lead the story and tell me, surprise me a little bit. And so I think that's kind of real life, right? Like you get in somebody's head and they're the ones who direct you. You don't know, like you can't tell them what to do. It's their personality that's coming out, and what they're going to do is what they're going to do, So, so yeah. And, and I still do my soundtracks, to all my books. I still have playlists for all of my characters, just like I always have. Music is always going to be integral to all of my books, but I try to like sort of narrow down the field.
That's so good. I love it.
Don't take writing advice from me, because I don't make it sound very fun at all. I make it sound like a mess is what it sounds.
No, you don't. You're fine. We're going to scoot over to a couple questions from our guests. Ashley would like to know, when things are difficult with writing, what are some things y'all do? I like the y'all. Hi, Ashley. I see you. What do y'all do to take a step back and recharge? Good question.
I start devouring other media. So I will take breaks and read books that are not at all related to what I'm writing. And I will binge watch TV shows, or like color, or, I just consume other media for a little while and just let my brain rest. Because if I'm not actively consuming something, then I'm consuming what's the next story in my head. So that's the only way I can give a break, is if I like force it to do something else for a little while. Mm-hmm. Something that somebody else made is such a vacation. So
totally, I feel that. Oh, so much. That's really good. Yeah,
you're like so ready for your vacation.
Okay, yeah. This prayer circle, right? No.
Yes.
Yes. Anonymous would like to know, you're so good at dual point of view. I totally agree with that. Did this one present any interesting challenges in writing from both Meg and Micah's point of view?
Actually, for the first time, they're so different that I know it was easy. And actually they came out pretty evenly too. Sometimes, like I said, with Luke and Veda, I had to like really dig into Veda because I had twice as much material for Luke. Mm-hmm. And most of it was pining. And so, but with like Meg and Micah, they both just, they had shit to do, so they just mm-hmm. like really spoke on the page. And I don't think I ever remember a moment where I was like, oh no, I don't have enough of this character. Maybe my editor would remember that. But I think they really came out in full force, and it was wonderful. And they're so very different. Meg's voice is very distinct, and mm-hmm. so is Micah's. So they never overlapped in my brain.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Sometimes if I read books that aren't as suave at doing that, I forget who is telling.
Yeah.
Like, wait, who is this? This one or that one? But I never had that problem with your book, because like they're so good. Distinct, which is really good. I mean, that's what we shoot for. So
right. Yay! That's what their goal is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Kathleen Glasgow is here. Hello, Kathleen.
Hi, Kathleen.
How are you? She wants to know about your titles, and she says you make the best titles ever. Talk about titles.
That's because I don't write my titles.
I know, right?
So, I mean, I wrote You'd Be Mine. That was my title. And I mean, I think I technically wrote Built to Last, which is my adult title, but More Than Maybe and Never Saw You Coming are both from my editor. And we like made a list, and I probably had like 50 titles, and she said no to all of them, which she was rightfully so. They were no good. And so, so yeah, I'm terrible at titles. I'm terrible, but wonderfully, I guess. Never Saw You Coming is a line in a Taylor Swift song, which my editor was listening to a lot of Taylor Swift at that time. And I think I was kind of into the line State of Grace, which I guess is probably, I think it's another book that came out like last year or something. Mm-hmm. And so we couldn't do that one. So we went with Never Saw You Coming. And I love it because I love the tie-in. I love the song State of Grace by Taylor Swift. It's perfect for this book. So it worked out, but it's not my genius. I can't claim it.
Yeah.
So thank you, Kathleen. But
Well, you mentioned adult books, and now you're writing adult and YA. So let's
Oh,
talk about that a little bit.
yeah, thanks, Ashley. I can see your comments underneath me.
Yes.
All caps. I during COVID, which is, I mean, it's still COVID, so I don't know why I say during
Mhm.
COVID, but last year during COVID, I had a little bit of time since we had to push out a couple releases, this one included, Never Saw You Coming, because just like production issues. So I had a little bit of time and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to write an adult romance, which is my favorite thing to read. And I've always wanted to do that. I've been a huge fan of like Sophie Kinsella, like the whole
Mhm.
like chick lit, which I'm definitely using air quotes because that's not what it's called anymore, thank goodness. But that's what I was super into in my early 20s. And so I've always wanted to see if I could write one. And I mean, I write upper YA anyway. So I was like, this is just like a little bit more, right? Like it should sound like the inside of my brain because I'm an adult, hopefully. It was sort of a challenge just because I do write YA and my brain is pretty immature. So YA comes naturally to me, but it also was so freeing to be able to write an adult romance and not necessarily have to conflict, like have like the conflict of being a teen. They do have conflict when they were teens in my adult book, but now they're adults and they've moved past it. And so it's kind of wonderful to be able to be like, well, that was a mess back then, but now we're going to have our second chance at making this right. And so, yeah, it was great. It's been a lot of fun and I can't wait to write more of them. So yeah.
I can't wait to read more of them because I've already read Built to Last and it's fabulous. So if y'all are gonna not be ready for this one,
Oh, it's so fun. So
it's
yeah.
so fun. I know it was fun to read. Yeah. Laura's here and she wants to know how do you stay sane when you have a manuscript on submission, subject to craft, and the world of writing and authoring?
Um, so you guys are gonna hate me, but I've been working with my same wonderful editor, Vicky, since You'd Be Mine, and she will send me like a text like the afternoon after she gets my submissions, like texting me like this is awesome. And so I never had to really like sweat it. That's totally unusual. And it's just because Vicky and I are like have the same brain. And I hope that it's like that forever. But so I can't really speak to that. Yeah, like my agent just said, nobody reads as fast as Vicky. She's
Oh, hi, Kate.
blows my
Yeah.
mind. And so I've been extremely fortunate. So yeah, I've
She's
never
so
had
sweet.
to, yeah, I've never had to wait. But I
Yeah.
think that's not common. And so I would probably be sweating my face off if that wasn't the case because you're so insecure, you just want them to love it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think, goodness, maybe having something else to take your mind off of it and
Yeah.
turn your email off because you're like, you know, the emails will just get you. And
I will say we've always said, and I think you agree with me on this one, is like just start whatever's next,
yeah,
another book.
yeah,
Which, not like you're going to actually write a whole other book, but just like you kind of have to just like put it to the side, like you said, and start writing something else, which I do that every time. Is I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to write something else.
yeah. And I think you need to fall in love with something else because then it helps you because you get those passes that
Yeah.
might be really hard. And it's just because it's not maybe that your book is the quote unquote bad or not right for the market. It's just that particular editor, it's not the right person for that book. And so
Yeah.
but there hopefully will be someone, and it takes time, and you don't want just any editor. You want your Vicky.
Right.
I have an
Exactly.
editor like that too that I love that just gets me, we work really well, and I'm just really thankful for that. And it takes a while sometimes to find that. And that time is not wasted. It's good time.
Yeah.
Just keep working, keep writing, keep finding your voice, keep finding who you are on the page. And that right editor will find you. And, yeah, goodness, it is
Well, and
hard.
your editors and your agents have to go to bat for you so
Mhm.
much that you really want people who are passionate about your work and understand where you're coming from, because they're the ones who are going to be sticking up for you in these meetings and your stories and the things you're going to talk about. I mean, I don't know any other editors or teams that would have gone for this book never saw you coming. I mean, it's just, especially in a secular market, it I think would be a tough sell. And I think it's extremely important to have somebody who's like, this is the meat of the story, and pushes you on it, and they challenge you, and they're like, we're going to do this anyways. And I think so, as much as it sucks to be on submission, you want that right fit, or your book won't be what it's meant to be, you know.
And honestly, this is not a debut. This is not your
No,
debut book.
right.
You know what I mean?
No,
And
it's
like
not
for
her
Erin to
debut.
go out with this for her debut, she would have had a lot, you know, a much different experience maybe. And, you know, this is a junior novel, and it reads like one. And it sits on the shelf in the right place, where you've got You Be Mine and More Than Maybe, and those two fit together in a certain way. And then this one does a little detour and does something else while still remaining in your brand. It goes somewhere else just a little bit to keep it interesting, because you don't want to write the same thing every book. You know, you want to diversify yourself, but you still want to be recognizable to your readers. And that's why, if you're an emerging writer, you're reading this is not a debut.
No. And I
Right.
needed my readers from the first two books to come with me on this, you know, and to trust me. And they've really come out, and it's been wonderful, because I mean, I really am taking you on a different journey here. You know, I'm asking you to like have faith in like the love story, and also stick with the rest of it. Cause like you said, it would be extremely difficult to debut with a story like this, you know, to find an audience and have them trust you. And I've just been very lucky to have readers who are trusting me right now to read it, you know, and so many of them have been like, man, if I had heard about this, I would not have read it. But because it's Erin, I've read it. And I'm so grateful for you guys, because
Yeah.
that would have been everybody, is like, why would you want to read this? It's a hard book, but they've come with me, and it's done some really, really good things. So yeah, been very lucky.
I know. Let's see. I'm going to see if there are any more questions. If we have anything, you can put them in the chat here. If not, we're just going to start talking about like Michigan and lakes and coffee and M&Ms and like all kinds of things. Oh, here comes the.
You said
I think,
Michigan and coffee and lakes, and I was
yeah.
so I'm back.
Oh, hi. Okay.
And was just like, okay, here I am.
Yep, that's my kind of conversation. No, this has been a wonderful conversation. I think everyone watching would agree. You guys were delightful, and this book is just so powerful, and I'm just excited to tell everybody to read it, because they need to. As I mentioned, I dropped the link. I think I can do it again. Yep. In the chat. So if you didn't get a copy for your friend or your neighbor or your coworker, you can still do that. All the signed copies are still at Nicola's Books. You can also order through Schuler's Books. I dropped the Nicola's link. Thank you, Laura, for hosting this evening and asking all of the wonderful and hard questions. And thank you, Erin, for answering all of them and writing this fabulous book. I'm going to clap for you, because you can't hear everyone clapping.
Thank you.
And I hope you have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you both again.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.